Alright, Steve-O, why we got a JK in the driveway?
Well, as a lot of you out there with JKs, especially 4-doors, know, the factory transmission crossmember hangs down pretty low and can get snagged on rocks, and it's just in a bad spot. You know, it gets beat on, and over time you can damage it with, you either dent it or bend it or just kind of push it out of alignment where it doesn't need to be anymore. And if you're going to put aftermarket skids and stuff like that on there, it won't line up after you beat it all and, you know, dent it up real bad. So we're going to replace that with some beef today.
So what product are we looking at?
This is from Rusty's Offroad Products. It's their trail tested tough transmission crossmember. It's made out of 1/4-inch plate. It's all cut to where it fits together like a jigsaw puzzle, and then they robotically weld it. The bottom has been formed to have no hard edges, so it will not snag up as easy. Mounts in all the factory locations. It comes with grade 8 hardware, black powder coat finish on it. You know, it didn't come with any instructions, but I mean it's a cross member. You know, take the old one out, put the new one in. Don't let the tranny fall on you and crush your head. That's rinse and repeat, kind of pretty easy. What else?
I think that covers most of it. Mainly we're doing it because his Jeep isn't lifted a whole lot. It's seen some abuse between Moab and our local wheeling spots, and his is rather abused. We want to put some good skid plate systems on his, and to do that, his current cross member's all jacked up. So we're going to put a real strong one in there so that it can take some abuse along with the skid plate system we throw at it. So stay tuned, I'll show you how to put her in. Alright, Steve-O, tell our good buddies on YouTube what we're looking at.
Well, we're going to change out the transmission crossmember on my JK today. And firstly, we're going to have to take the transfer case skid plate off. And then we're going to have to take the fuel tank skid plate loose. You can see how bent and beat up it is. And then we'll get the nuts out of the studs for the actual transmission mount. And then we'll unbolt it at both ends, drop it out, rinse and repeat.
Alright.
You can see how just, you know, I have definitely seen pictures of worse ones than this, but once you start warping them and bending them, they just get worse and worse as time goes on. The front end of it's all beat up. It's got plenty of dents and dings in it. And I've got an aftermarket skid plate system going in it, but I can go ahead and tell you that this one is beat up bad enough to where it won't match. So we're going to put some new beefier parts in it, and never have to worry about it again.
And because most of these bolts are so jacked up, we're going to put crescent wrenches on them instead of sockets, more than likely, because they ain't going to take a socket no more.
No, these are they're out around, and all the hex is beat off of them. You know, you won't even be able to fit a socket on most of them, so it's going to be slow going, but we'll get her done. Alright guys, first thing we did, we're taking all 4 bolts out of here, and the other end of the transmission or transfer case skid. Gonna drop this down, and Steve's over there working on dropping down the front end of the fuel tank skid, and then we can actually work on the cross member. Real easy stuff, nothing difficult. So as you guys can see, there's no more transfer case skid. Fuel tank skid is loosened up. Now he's pulling the mount bolts out of the transmission mount that are in the cross member. Once those are out, the transmission will be free. Then we can jack up the transmission and start pulling the bolts out of the cross member to the frame. Real easy job so far. Alright, so you can see what we've done here. We put the floor jack underneath the transfer case to raise and support the transmission and transfer case while the cross member is lowered down out of there and replaced. Being that the transfer case and transmission are completely held by the cross member, you need to support them with something. We'll leave the floor jack in place the entire time we do this job. That's the best way we know to do it. So now we got like 4 bolts holding the cross member in, which Steve is going to drop them out right now. And then we can go ahead and drop it out. Alright, we've pulled 1 bolt from each side and loosened the other one. You can see it's out over there. So all we need to do is pull these two bolts out, this one here, that one there. The whole unit will drop down real nice, and we can put the new one up in place. But we'll show them to you side by side so you can compare new to old.
Well, folks, we got her out, and as you can see, she's pretty light. I don't know what the gauge of steel is, but comparatively, if you set them side by side, this bad boy is way thicker and heavier duty. It's fully seam welded. This one has just got some seam welds on the long surfaces here, but you can tell right here where I've split that. It wasn't welded.
Oh, look at the other end.
It's just bent, you know. And
Put
then
that
on the
thing
bottom, you can tell it's got all the same bolt hole locations, but she's got all kinds of dents in it. I don't know how well that's going to translate onto the GoPro, but all this is pretty caved in.
That's impressive how jacked up that is.
We're just gonna do a little fun here, have a little experiment, and compare the weight of the old one versus the new one. She's setting at right at about maybe 17 3/4 pounds, according to my calibrated eyeball. And our Rusty's is right over 35 pounds. So you can tell right there, she's got some thicker stuff on it. That's pretty amazing.
Alright, so we got the new unit up here and in place. It's nice. We're leaving the 4 main mount bolts loose until we've got it slid side to side and all of our bolts started, because we want to make sure it's positioned right the first time.
It's got channels built into it so that it's adjustable. So you don't want to go tightening everything down and smoking one thing down until you have all your holes lined up, because it's got enough adjustability built into it where you can make it fit.
So we're gonna line everything up, make sure everything fits, and then we'll start tightening everything once we've got all of our bolts started. We'd hate to smoke a few bolts real tight and then get to the end and have one bolt not line up because we tightened something too much first.
Here.
What he's looking at is the fuel tank skid. We're just gonna have to move things around a little bit.
Yeah.
Once we should be able to slide the cross member towards the driver's side of the vehicle, and those bolt holes should hopefully line right up for us. So what he's doing now is he's slid the cross member towards the driver's side of the vehicle. And one thing real nice about this Rusty's kit is it has a sandwich plate to sandwich the fuel tank skid instead of literally just going through it. So that'll help hold it a good deal better.
It's going to distribute the load, and it'll actually keep it from getting caught and peeled back, which is nice.
So I do like that feature. Alright, so what we did, we put our skid plate back up in place after we had the transmission tight. We started the rear two. They're not tight yet, but we started them. Then we raised the front end up into place. We had to slide the nuts up inside, but they got some pretty gnarly teeth on them. And we left the nuts up in there, and we popped our bolts up in and started to tighten those up. So now we'll put wrenches on all of these and get them good and tight. We're hoping that the teeth on those nuts hold them tight, because getting a wrench in there would be interesting, but I think it's going to work. Alright guys, we're just finishing it up. He's tightening the 4 main bolts that go to the frame, and we're done. Overall, very easy install. Don't forget to tighten them. Make sure you tighten those bolts you left loose. Tighten everything up real good. We're impressed.
Yeah, this was way too easy.
We got so much time left. We're gonna find another project for the day.
Yep.
Your two front bolts on the transfer case skid plate. They're the nuts are welded into the cross member from the factory. What Rusty's does, they give you these bolts and nuts that you put up in there, so that over time, if anything shifts, it's always going to line up. There's a little bit of adjustability. One thing we thought was really cool, they include these nuts that have these teeth on them, so we didn't even have to put a wrench on the inside of the cross member. Put this up there, get it started. The teeth bit down good enough that we could smoke those bolts all the way in. The nut didn't spin a bit. These nuts with the teeth, really cool. Really like that feature. Made the install a lot easier. We're very impressed with the install. I highly recommend it. Once again, just like our lift kit review video of my Jeep, we weren't paid to do this video. We just like their products, so we wanted to do this for you guys. Highly recommend it. It's going to add a lot of beef to the underside of your Jeep, especially if you have a skid plate system. It's going to make it a lot better. Hope you guys like it.